Chapter 25. Real Journeys. David and Cornelia spent a restless day. They were both eager to make a dream journey to grandfather, and they also wanted to talk to mother, but they couldn't dream without being asleep, and mother was away at work. They were full of questions together, but neither of them knew the answers. They were just restless, stewing in their own questions, knowing their questions were very similar. They were so charged with energy that they decided to go for a walk. They began walking along the street and soon came to a park. Walking along one of the park lanes, they suddenly began to run, both at the same time. And they ran together, not in competition to see who could run fastest, but running comfortably side by side, until they came to a grove of trees. A brook ran through the grove, and they ran along the brook until it led to a small lake. They both stopped at the same time and sat down on a grassy spot on the bank of the lake. David suddenly looked at Cornelia and said, "I know what we can do. We can talk to Elephant. I haven't visited Elephant in many years. And I could talk to Jessie. I haven't talked to Jessie since you came home." "You mean you can talk to Jessie even when she's not here?" asked David. "Why not? You talk to Elephant even though Elephant isn't here. Not really, not like Jessie." David and Cornelia lay back on the grass and closed their eyes. David silently called out, "Elephant, are you here? Could you come visit with me?" And Cornelia silently said, "Jessie, I know you're really at home on my bed, but could you come visit with me here anyway?" Elephant slowly walked up and said, "I've brought a friend with me." David looked behind Elephant and was startled. It was Jessie the giraffe. He had never visited with her before, except for the first time when Cornelia introduced her to David, and David had asked Cornelia if she spoke. Then Elephant said, "And I've got another surprise for you as well." David was really shocked now, for here was Cornelia walking along behind Jessie. "Cornelia, are you really here? I'm just as surprised as you are. I didn't expect to meet Elephant, and I certainly didn't expect to meet you also. Is this really happening?" At this point, Elephant and Jessie intervened and said, "Yes, we're all here together. We're used to being wherever we are. It's never a surprise to us. But you two seem to have some fixed rules about what can happen when you close your eyes. Just as you seem to be a bit frozen about who you can visit in your dreams. An inner journey is not that different from a dream journey, and it seemed that you're both ready to learn more about this dimension of reality. Reality isn't only outside of you, it's also inside, and you've both just begun to explore this side of what is real." Chapter 26. The Inner Reality. "The inner reality is actually much larger than the outer reality," Elephant began. "And for thousands of years people visited it regularly. They drew most of their wisdom and knowing from it, and they trusted its guidance. They visited each other and also those who had already left them in this inner reality. The inner reality has a glue that held them together in a very deep and wonderful way. But this was a time when people wandered around freely in small tribes and had many adventures as well in the outer reality. But when people stopped wandering and began to build towns and cities, they lived without taking long walks together. They began to have ideas that everybody's inner reality should be the same, and they argued about it rather than respecting that every person has a unique experience in their inner reality. They began to think that inner reality should be as consistent as outer reality. This was their great mistake, for then the inner richness of every person began to be eroded, worn down, compared, and argued about. And occasionally a strong leader would appear in a city or town who would insist that there was only one inner reality and that everyone should see the same thing in it. This was the greatest assault ever upon the most creative roots of the individual person. You see, this began to destroy the very glue that held people together and that enriched the entire community. The outer reality held people together only when there was danger, or when people were in need and had to cooperate in order that everyone would be fed and could survive. But the inner reality was the source of each person's gifts, and when they were properly shared with each other, there was tremendous abundance in the community. These were times when ignorance and control were rampant, and people were ejected from the community when their inner reality didn't conform to that of the leaders, and later they were even tortured or killed. The leaders justified all of this in their own small minds that had become severely twisted and damaged. People were never meant to control each other, but to cooperate and enjoy their time together. As time went on, people arrived at a place where they were afraid to share their inner reality, as you well know, David, and so they kept it hidden, and some even denied that it existed, or became afraid of it when it showed itself, so that even small children were taught that it was not real, and that it was even shameful to carry it or to share it, and so they hid it from others, and some hid it so deeply that it was even hidden from themselves. The greatest source of richness in the world was closed down, and it was replaced with people's control of each other. David was aghast to hear this. Cornelia just listened with intense interest. "You and Gordy helped me to remain true to my inner reality, didn't you, Elephant?" David exclaimed. "Yes," Elephant replied. "We were your lifeline, as well as the Council of Animals. What you also learned in the village was that there are ceremonies that keep some people connected to their inner reality." Chapter 27. Deep Love. Cornelia could not contain herself. She had been itching to say something and finally asked, "Elephant, can I talk to you as well as to Jessie, even though you are David's?" Elephant laughed a trumpeting laugh. "We don't belong to people, even though we have a tendency to visit some people regularly. And there are those who get the idea that we belong to them. But that's only because it has been so long since people have really had a deep intimacy with themselves or with anyone else. And so it is essential that they understand that intimacy and commitment are really possible. They need to learn that commitment and deep relationship are essential in this universe, and that this is one of the elements that is so necessary to themselves. There is a foundational reality within everyone, and if the only knowledge of it they have is in the outer reality, then they never really understand what being alive is. The kind of relationship a person has with themselves is then what shows up with others in the outer reality. Well, actually, there's only one reality, and it exists in layers. But unfortunately, people have become distanced from the deepest layers of who they are. So consistency and deep intimacy are things that need to be reawakened in people. And this reawakening is one of our most important jobs. Cornelia was overwhelmed to hear this. David thought that perhaps she was too young to understand, but she understood perfectly. "I used to feel this with Mommy and Daddy," she blurted out, "but that was long ago, and I've missed it greatly. Now I know that's what I get from Jessie." "Yes," Jessie replied, "there has always been a deep love between us." I know," Cornelia repeated. "And when I first heard about Elephant and Grandfather, I also felt a deep love for them, even though I had never met them. But I felt that I already knew them, and that I had known them all my life. And I was so happy to feel that, because I had already come to miss it with Mommy and Daddy." Jessie answered, "Unfortunately, Mommy and Daddy had already created a distance from that place in themselves. And even though they also missed that closeness, they didn't realize that the distance was inside of themselves, a remoteness from the deepest layer of knowing themselves. So do we visit people in our dreams because those are the people that we are closest to? Cornelia asked, like David and grandfather. Those are the people that it's easiest to visit because they're in deep contact with themselves. And being in deep connection with who they are, they also pay attention to their dreams in a deeper way. Your mother and father are already at a great distance from their dreams, and this shows up in their relationships with other people as well, and in their connection with animals. Chapter 28, The Disconnect. When Mother arrived, Cornelia could not contain herself. "We know the little old Indian man that you visited in your dream, Mommy. David and I have also visited him. Isn't he great?" Mother's face turned ashen white. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes were wide open. She looked like she had seen a ghost. David realized she was in a state of shock, and he also realized that Cornelia, for all her natural brilliance, had not foreseen that such a statement would terrify their mother. She was not at home with her inner reality, other than to treat it as something that was quite alien. So for such a statement to be made, as if other people knew something about her inner world, brought her to the edge of the defense system that she had set up so long ago. Mother sat down on a chair, and David offered her a glass of water. She took it and drank the entire glassful without stopping. "Mother, are you all right?" She looked at him as if she didn't understand his words. "It is such a warm day, Mother. You must be exhausted. Would you like another glass?" Again, Mother looked at him without a hint of comprehension. He put his hand gently on her shoulder, and she let out a start. "David, what are you doing here?" David hardly knew how to answer her. Had she disconnected from the fact that he had returned home? Did she think she was somewhere else? "You must be tired, Mother. Would you like to lay down a while? And Cornelia and I will prepare dinner." Mother looked around slowly and then focused on Cornelia. "I am awfully tired. I do think I'll lay down a while." She stood up and went into her bedroom. David and Cornelia just looked at each other in wonder, and David said, "There may be things she's not ready to talk about. Maybe they don't fit into the map of her life. We need to be gentle with her and to approach this slowly. We had a glimpse of a doorway this morning, and now it seems as if it has slammed shut. But maybe it will show itself again. If she is ready to grow, it will." Cornelia just nodded. Chapter 29, Collusion. When Father arrived home from work, he was surprised to find David and Cornelia in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Where's Mother?" he asked. "She was very tired, Daddy, so she lay down and we offered to fix dinner." Father just looked at them. David was preparing some salmon that he had found in the freezer. While in the village, he had learned to prepare all the various foods that were available there, and salmon was one of them, as well as many different kinds of seafoods and seaweed and roots and berries. The kitchen smelled delicious. "I didn't know you could cook. Is that one of the things you learned at your special school? It smells good." "Yes, Father. Every student learned to prepare various kinds of foods. We learned to be self-sufficient in every situation. Sit down. Cornelia, why don't you go call Mother?" Cornelia looked briefly at David with a question in her eye. "Just tell her father is home, and dinner is ready." Cornelia left the kitchen and returned a short while later. "She said she'd be right here. She said she was surprised. She didn't realize she'd been asleep so long. She said she must have been very tired." Cornelia looked knowingly at David. Father continued his conversation with David. "I didn't know boys learned how to cook at school. We certainly didn't when I was in school. What else did you learn there?" Just then Mother entered the kitchen. She looked rested and refreshed. "It is so nice to have children that can cook." She sat down at the table. David served her first. "That salmon smells delicious. Is that a maple syrup glaze on it? Wherever did you learn to cook like this?" "I was just asking him the same thing," Father interspersed. "He says they taught him how to cook at the special school that he attended. I was never taught how to cook at school, but this is mighty tasty. You do a glazed salmon sometimes too, don't you, Mother?" "Yes, I've always enjoyed cooking. Why, just last night on the TV, they made the most interesting salad. You saw that too, didn't you, dear?" "I did catch a glimpse of it, yes." "Well, David, I guess now you and Mother can teach Cornelia how to cook. I bet you'd like to learn to cook like this, wouldn't you, Corny?" "Oh, she's much too young for that, aren't you, Cornelia?" Cornelia recognized that all this talk was really camouflage. She really wanted to talk about her mother's dream and why Mother had been so dumbstruck when Cornelia had first asked her about it. She realized that Father was helping her avoid it, and she recognized that this happened quite often. Collusion was one of their main defense systems. She felt so thankful that she now had David that she could talk to about things like this, because she knew that even if she raised the topic, both her mother and father would deny any collusion and claim they were just talking, and that Cornelia must be imagining things. She also recognized that it was difficult to talk to anyone about anything when their first reaction was to deny the reality of the questioner. Chapter 30. The Question. Dinner continued in the same vein of talking about how good the food was and about the things a person learned in school and how nice it would be when Cornelia goes to school. Cornelia felt it was like watching the surface of a deep sea, and she was yearning to dive into it to see how deep the ocean is and what lies at the bottom. But she also understood that her parents dreaded going deeper and that their usual realm was the surface of things. She understood that what she loved about David and also about Grandfather was that she could ask them anything, and they would take her questions as valid, rather than disqualifying the question and the questioner. She realized that she felt dismissed by people when they thought her questions were cute, or that she had a vivid imagination, or that she spoke of imaginary things that they didn't consider real. She suddenly understood that the division between real and not real, or between real and imaginary, was a protective wall that people had built, and that its purpose was twofold: to split awareness in two, and also to protect themselves on one side of the wall. The other side of the wall was dismissed before it was given any consideration. But she also recognized that to dismiss the imaginary half of reality was to dismiss her own questions, and therefore her own value. She also understood that most people did not like to be wrong, and that the wall was a protection between right and wrong. As the dinner conversation continued, Cornelia realized that she was seeing the depths of the ocean just in how people stayed on the surface. She recognized that David was staying on the surface with their parents as a way to humor them, but perhaps also to help protect them from being confronted with the division that they themselves maintained. They did not really want to see their own boundaries, their own structures, and if confronted, they would deny that they had any boundaries, or that there was a habitual structure, a pattern that they were very unwilling to look at. No one likes to be a pattern, Cornelia thought to herself. They like to think of themselves as alive and as free. Alive and free was part of the story that they had learned to tell about themselves, and the division in which they allowed themselves to think and to talk about served also to protect the story they told about who they were. It must not be easy to question oneself, because then you must step outside of the story you tell about who you are, and you don't even know where the questioner is standing. Cornelia was deep in thought when she realized that a question had been put to her by Mother. She looked at her mother and asked, "What?" I asked if you and David had had an enjoyable day, since I was so tired when I arrived that we haven't had a chance to talk." Cornelia decided to risk it. "Don't you remember, Mom? When you arrived, I asked you about the dream you had about the little old Indian." "I certainly don't know what you're referring to. I haven't had any dream about an Indian, and I went directly to bed when I arrived. I was so tired from working all day, and this is the very first chance we've had a chance to talk. Wherever did you get that silly idea about a dream?" Cornelia was flustered, but she recognized her reaction and understood that being flustered was playing into her mother's denial of what had happened. But what could she do? If she tried to confront her mother, and she was very willing to do that, she knew that her mother would just intensify her denial. So she turned to David. "David, you remember our conversation with Mom when she arrived home from work, and I asked her about her dream with the old Indian?" Mother and father were suddenly stock still, and all looked at David, waiting for his answer. David realized that if he answered truthfully, mother and father would join together in opposition to him and Cornelia. But he also recognized that mother was in a very fragile position, and that she could easily repeat the reaction that she had when she first arrived and become frozen and tired again. Yet he felt an inherent need to validate Cornelia's question and the reality of what had taken place. It was an uncomfortable position to be in. He turned first to his mother. "Mother, you were so tired when you arrived that I doubt if you remember anything that was said to you at that time." For this was true right now. Cornelia and I had been talking about the reality of dreams and how sometimes they coincide with other things that we've known. And we spoke of the fact that we've both had dreams in which an old Indian man was present. Then turning to his sister, "Cornelia, I think perhaps we just need to ask our dreams for an answer to our questions, since they're about dreams in the first place." Cornelia recognized that David was trying to smooth over the situation without confronting their mother, and she understood his subtle statement to her, that perhaps the answer did lie in their dreams themselves. They could both journey tonight to Grandfather and ask him if he had been in one of Mother's dreams, and if so, why Mother was so afraid now. But she knew that she would have to talk to David later, for she found the present situation untenable. "David, I think that is a capital idea." Again, David was overawed at her powerful and skillful use of language. Chapter 31, The Approach. After dinner, while Mother and Father were both watching TV, and David and Cornelia were washing the dishes, Cornelia said, "I know you tried to defuse an uncomfortable situation, but I think Mom needs to take responsibility for what she said and did." "I think so also," David replied, "but I don't think the dinner table was the right place for that. And I felt she would just go into that place of tired withdrawal again, and that Father would get upset and blame us for it. She's at a very delicate place in her balance. On the one hand, we know about her dream because she told us, and on the other, she seems to be terrified of it, and would rather disappear than to be confronted about it. It is the ultimate place of retreat, and I think Father would have tried to support her and be against us, and that would create a very difficult rift. You know, he frequently moves to a position of opposition, but this time it would be him and Mother against you and me. So how should we go about it then?" "I think the best approach is to visit Grandfather together tonight and to ask his advice." "Good, that sounds exciting." Chapter 32, The Longhouse. It was night time, and the Longhouse was quiet, except for the gentle snores and warm murmurs of people sleeping. Grandfather was already waiting, and the water for tea was already boiling. "Hello, welcome. I've been expecting you. Sit here with me, and we'll have a cup of tea." He poured the boiling water over the fresh herbs and handed a small bowl of it to each of his guests. They each greeted Grandfather warmly and took the bowl in both hands, feeling its gentle warmth suffusing into their hands and letting it cool before sipping. Grandfather held his also and looked deeply at each of them, but in a very unobtrusive way, seemingly shy, but very present. Profoundly present. His guests each felt a gently tangible acceptance, not just of their own presence, but throughout the depth of their being, an acceptance without judgment of any sort, held by Grandfather's presence while they arrived and relaxed, layer by layer. Grandfather, were you with? Both eagerly spoke at the same time, then stopped together, looked at one another, then at Grandfather, and they all laughed. You seem to be in a hurry. Just feel the energy of that need and give it some room in who you are. Each breathed deeply and long, took yet another breath, and then sipped the tea. Allowing hot tea to cool is a very good way to arrive. This hot tea is a gift of the earth, of the water, of the herbs, and of the fire. And we join together with the earth and all of her gifts as we imbibe it together. The earth is seldom in a hurry, and yet accomplishes so very much at her own natural pace. People in a hurry frequently trip over their own feet. Grandfather's settledness infused itself into his guests as the tea filled their bellies and the warmth their bodies. Finally, Cornelia spoke. We need to know if you visited Mommy in a dream. Why not ask her yourself? She's sitting here with you. David and Cornelia almost jumped out of their skins. They'd been so focused on Grandfather and on the questions that were jumping around inside of them that they had not noticed Mother sitting to their left, comfortably sipping her tea. Mother! Mommy! Again both stopped, looked at one another, and laughed. Grandfather also had a smile on his lips, and their mother sat demurely present. Mother, how long have you been visiting Grandfather? I don't really know. Recently, as I sleep, I'm suddenly here with him. We don't have much to say to each other, but it feels so very good just to be here. I don't really know the man, but being here with him fills me with such a natural sense of satisfaction. And it feels so natural for both of you to be here as well. And I don't seem to have any questions. In fact, I don't even think much when I'm here. I just relish the beauty of the place deep inside. It's a place that I remember having when I was a girl, a place where everything is so natural and easy, and there's no requirement to perform in any particular way. David and Cornelia sat in stunned silence. They had never heard their mother speak in such an easy and relaxed manner before. This seemed like a woman that they had never really known before now, yet they both knew her in her own somewhat frantic and obedient way at home. Your mother has room here, but only when she's deeply asleep. When she's awake, she steps into that self that she learned to be for the sake of others, to serve, to perform, to attend to other people. And the basis of her performance is a fear of not being accepted, fear of being rejected, of being judged as not good enough. And that layer of fear is the thing that holds her together as the mother both of you have known. This is your mother deep inside of who she is, but her fear holds her into two parts. And in order for her to heal back into one being, she will have to go through the experience of that fear when she is awake. She cannot be shoved through it. That would just increase the fear. But if she is loved and treated gently, she may eventually be able to heal together these two sides of who she is. David and Cornelia stared in utter silence as Grandfather spoke. This is not at all what they had been expecting. Chapter 33, The Roots. Yesterday, when I asked her about her dream, she almost fainted, and then later acted as if she had just been tired. How can we help her to heal from this fear? To ask her about this side of herself would throw her into a panic. Fainting is the sudden retreat from the panic. Instead of asking her about her dreams, just tell her about your own. Not abruptly, not forcefully, but gently, almost as an aside. Let her hear how at home you are with your own dreams, how intriguing you find them, how curious you are about them, but also how you recognize them as a deep aspect of who you are. Dreams are the roots of our reality in the existence of the universe, and this universe nurtures us through them and promotes our growing and our union with the greater whole. Dreams seem strange because the reality out of which we grow is itself strange when compared to our daily life. Our daily life is like the blossom standing in the sunshine and sharing itself with the bees and the butterflies. But the blossom knows almost nothing of the roots that are buried in the dark and moist earth, and how those roots embrace their darkness and earthiness in order to nurture the growing that eventually results in the blossom. The blossom reaches for the sunshine. It has to. That is its job. But the roots reach for the depth of the earth, and there it is dark and moist and very close. The blossom needs space around itself, but the roots need the contact with the inside of the earth and the gentle pressure that holds them there. The blossom is not the roots, and the roots are not the blossom, but they're always in close relationship with each other, necessarily so. And so in this way, they participate in each other's existence, although they are almost polar opposites. But they do have an almost magical and essential relationship. Each would die without the other. However, the roots can grow for a long time without appearing above the earth, as the shoot that eventually blossoms. There can be no blossoming without the roots, but the roots can exist for a long time without giving rise to a blossom. The roots must wait for a certain conjunction, a specific alignment of season and weather and moisture and soil before it dares poke its head above the ground. The roots themselves must be in alignment with the rest of the universe before they can make the jump necessary for aliveness to show its lovely face. We don't know how lucky we are that our own roots have dared trust the present circumstances. Of course, we're different from the flower, much more complex, and so strongly committed to asking questions about our own existence. So respect your dreams and realize that the blossom can only be what it is because of the commitment of the roots, and that the flower must accept the mysterious differences. Understanding does not need to be in control, but it can still honor its own mysterious roots. Cornelia did not understand, and neither did David, but they both felt an awesome and deep respect for the mysterious complexity of their own existence, and they had a renewed respect for the dreams that intrigued them so. This is the end of Book 3, Dream Visits. Thank you for listening. I invite you to continue on with Book 4, Mother. I'm Steve Gallegos, the reader and the author.